Good morning. How we doing? All right. Miss you guys. Been off for what, a week or maybe two? Wow, Melba, thank you. 2 long waiting weeks. Well, I'm excited for today to experience this first day of this new life stage for me with some of my favorite people. So we got my birthday today and wouldn't rather be anywhere else but here with all of you. So this is great, a great start to it. But today is interview day, and we have 2 special guests that we get opportunity to chat with and get to know a little bit more. And for those of you that it's your first time with interviews, what we want to do here in class is take an opportunity to get to know the people that are connected with Compass Bible Church. And so we've had our pastors here. So we've seen the connection, or we've made the connection that we can have with our pastors here on staff. We've had the Shriners come in, or Patrick Shriner. So we've seen the work that God is doing here in South Orange County. We see the work that God is doing in Kansas City with Patrick Shriner and his impact. And now we get to take a trip overseas and see the great work that God is doing overseas. And so I'm excited to have the Zeller family here and excited to be able to spend this time to get to know them this morning. But before I turn it over to them, we were chatting this morning just about an interesting way that God works, and I wanted to share that because if many of you don't know, Eric Zeller and Pastor PJ were friends, and they were connected. It was connected with your younger brother, and you got a chance to know Pastor PJ from even back when they were in Dallas, him and Amanda and the family, and he was one of the main reasons that God was able to use Pastor PJ to get here to Compass because of Eric and Heather being able to make a call and saying, hey, you need to check this guy out, Pastor PJ. And then lo and behold, Pastor PJ ends up here in at Compass, praise God. So he's here at Compass. And then, as most of you know, when I got a chance to talk with Pastor PJ, then Pastor PJ was highly influential in regards to my spiritual walk and even my discipleship to getting where I'm at today. And so you just think about the way that God is sovereign over everything and think that way back in the day when Eric and Heather knew Pastor PJ and Amanda back in Dallas and got him to Compass, and then God was able to use Pastor PJ to then influence my life and help me get to a place where I'm here in full-time ministry. And it's just so amazing that we can see God's hand faithfully working, and oftentimes we don't even know. We do things and we walk past it thinking, I don't know what's going to happen, but God tells us he works everything out for the good, and we see that with an example here. And I think it's great that you and I are here talking, and Pastor PJ is preaching over in main service, and praise God for how he's working, and that's amazing. So, yeah.
I heard some of Pastor PJ's first sermons, like way back in the day.
Ooh.
And then I heard him last night, and he's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
You guys, we heard the early sermon, so that now you can hear the good stuff.
Well, praise God for that, and he's continuing to grow him, and he's doing tremendous work here and impacting all of us. So, but yeah, Zeller family, excited to have you. Excited to have your whole clan here. We got the kids running around and reuniting with old friends and getting plugged in. But yeah, what we love to do with these interviews is really just start with background and getting to know a little bit about who you are and where you started at and how you got to where you are now. So Eric, I'll pass that over to you and just tell us a little bit about who you are and give us some background, and then Heather will go to you next.
Yeah, well, good morning. First of all, it's great to be here. Great to see so many of you that we've gotten to know over the years, and meet some new faces as well. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be with y'all this morning. We're really thankful for Compass, for our partnership with you. And so, Zellers, raise your hands. We got some Zellers over there in the back. Yeah, we got our 3 oldest over there, and the younger ones are somewhere. But
that's what happens when you have 5 kids.
It's good. It's in the computer.
They're somewhere. They're fine.
They're fine. They'll be all right. So where we come from. So I grew up in Palos Verdes, just a little ways up the coast from here. And my family, like so many over the years, we were kind of trendsetters in this regard. We thought, let's get out of California and move to Texas. And so we were kind of in an early wave of that. I think other people have followed us over the years, including Compass, Texas now, right?
Hill Country, yeah.
And so when I was 10 years old, we moved to Texas, and so kind of grew up in Texas from that point. But The Lord, when I was young, we were not a believing family. We didn't go to church growing up, and my parents were saved around and kind of in their mid-30s through the ministry of John MacArthur. And so they heard some tapes and they realized, you know what, we are not Christians. We got problems. So they listened to the tapes, they heard the sermons, they read the Bible, and God saved them. And so kind of from when I was in my middle childhood, we started going to church, started hearing the message of the gospel. And so fast forward a few years, the Lord saved me as a teenager through that. And when it came time to think about going to school, trying to go off to college, figuring out what to do when I grew up, I had a lot of ideas. I was into computers, and the internet was coming out back in those days, and I did some programming, and so I was thinking of a career in those fields, and I could have been the next Mark Zuckerberg, but the Lord saved me from that. And so so what I ended up doing was I heard about, kind of through this now, my parents had this connection to John MacArthur and heard about the Master's College, it was called in those days. And so they had a one-year Bible program. You could go for a year and you could take classes in Bible and theology and just do that certificate for a year and then go on and complete your degree wherever you want to. And so I thought, I'd really like to spend a year taking Bible classes. There's a lot I don't understand. There's a lot I haven't figured out. So I thought, surely if I spend a year studying the Bible, surely I'll have figured everything out by then.
That's all you need is 1 year.
Yeah, well, and then I spent about like 20 years in seminary after that. So I thought I'd have it all figured out in the 1 year. So I went for the 1 year, and I was thinking I'd go study computer science or something after that. But what happened was I got out there, I started having classes in systematic theology, started taking Greek, started taking hermeneutics, and the Lord just opened my eyes to the riches of his word, and I loved it. And I loved spending my days digging in deep and figuring out what do these words and these phrases and these tenses mean, and how do you put it all together, and just things that I guess probably had been talked about while I was in the church growing up, but somehow it sort of passed over my head. Suddenly, I was just soaking it in, and I thought, I love this. I want to understand more, and I want to help other people understand the things that I'm understanding about God and about his ways. And so this hunger was born in me to communicate the truth of Scripture. And so that happened during that year. And I thought, maybe I probably just need a little, I haven't figured everything out yet. So maybe I should just stick around a little while longer. And so I decided to stay in the bachelor's program, got a degree in biblical studies. And, I never thought too much about missions all growing up. That just hadn't really been on my radar screen. I heard some missionary biographies and heard about these people that moved to far countries, and they were, kind of these great heroes and spiritual giants, and, people that, prayed for 10 hours a day and just had this unique relationship with God. And so I'd heard about that, but it just, that wasn't really on my radar very much. But what happened was I was a freshman in college, and so I'm in the dorm, and there was this guy, a fellow student, his name was Matt, and he had a work-study job on campus, and his job was cleaning the bathrooms in the dorm. And so he was a nice guy, and so when, I'd be in my dorm, and he'd come through on his weekly bathroom cleaning ritual, and we'd talk a little bit. And so one week he comes through, and he's cleaning the bathroom, and we're chatting as he does, and he says, "Hey, Zeller, I'm leading a mission trip this summer," and it's a mission trip to Italy. And he said, "Today's the last day for signups for the mission trip, and I really need another guy on the team. So I just need you to go down and sign up for this trip and come to Italy with me this summer."
This is a small little task to do.
Yeah, just a little
thing. A big deal.
And so I'm like, ha, ha, ha. And then I'm like, well, what am I doing this summer? I mean, I guess there's probably worse things to do than spending your summer in Italy. So I thought, yeah, sure, I'll go. So I went down there, and I was under 18 at the time, so I had to forge my parents' signature on the form to get in. So I did that. Hopefully, statute of limitations has expired on that. So that happened, and so we went on the trip to Italy, and it was amazing. The Lord used that to really open my eyes. It wasn't all about your view of Italy, like pasta and romance and all this, but it was. We worked with these church planners. They were in a small village, and they'd been there. They were Americans, but they'd lived there for 30 years, and they knew the language, and they knew the people, and just were laboring, just doing faithful ministry in this small town. And we stayed with the missionaries. We stayed in their house and got to know them, and they had kids around our age, and just realized here's this very regular family. I mean, they were just normal people. They were kind of like people that I knew from home, like people in my church, but they lived in this other place, and they were committed their lives to these people and to doing ministry among them. And that just started some wheels turning in my head to think, like, that's interesting that regular people are doing things like this just in a different place. And so I started reading, and I started listening to John Piper sermons and hearing about the world and just kind of the distribution of resources within the world, and how we have, in the U.S., we have a lot of people who are unsaved. There's so much need here in this country, but there's also a lot of resources here. There are a lot of churches, right? So people here in Orange County, there's a lot of non-Christians here, but there's also, like, all of you are here. You're here to share the gospel with them. The churches are here where if they look it up online, they can come to a church and hear the gospel preached. Whereas there's so many places in the world where there's just not that access to a Christian. There's not that access to the gospel. So I started learning about that and realizing, okay, like, simultaneously I'm having this desire to go and be in ministry. But, if I want to come to, I didn't know about Compass Bible Church in those days, but if I want to come to a church like Compass and be one of the pastors here, there's probably 100 other people that want to do that job. But maybe if I'm going to go be a church planner in Italy, nobody else wants to do that job. And so I just started thinking, okay, maybe this is how the Lord might use us. And so I started thinking about potentially maybe I should think about, if I want to be in ministry, doing that in a different part of the world where there's more needs. And so that's kind of where I was when I met Heather. So if you want to back up and start into your end of the story.
Okay. Do I need to do anything?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. So.
Maybe.
Is it on?
There you go.
Okay. I grew up in Redding, California, north of here, way north. To believing parents, and I've just seen my whole life has been God at work, slowly revealing himself to me, letting me see he's good and his plan is perfect. And so grew up in Redding, believing parents. Our church was really focused on missions. And so from an early age, we always had missionaries in the house. We would go to Mexico and work in an orphanage. We adopted my little sister from Mexico. So missions was on the forefront of my mind.
Different from my childhood.
Yeah. And I think early on I was enamored by, there's a big world out there and the pictures are cool. And but as God worked, I think around 12 years old, I remember really seeing, I think I was just frustrated with sin and I'd gotten angry again or something. And I remember my mom saying, well, there's forgiveness, and this faith has to be your own. It's not ours. And really struggling with that at 12 years old and wrestling with it and seeing, it's not my parents' faith. I believe in what Jesus has done for me. And somehow, so that was an Assemblies of God church I went to. So it was a very basic gospel. Never heard expository preaching, but I heard the gospel. Fast forward, I'm looking for a college, trying to decide where to go. Missions is still forefront of my mind. And somehow Masters pops up in the ads, and my parents knew someone working there. It was totally it didn't match with the Assemblies of God that I'd grown up in. But they were focused on missions, and when I went to visit, it just struck me that they really were serious about reaching the world.
Had you ever gone on a missions trip prior to that, growing up?
Just to Mexico and one time to London.
Oh.
But I was discouraged after going with the youth group to London because we just hung out. We didn't do anything. Yeah. It's just one of those, you paid the money, and we did some kids' camps, but it really was sad about it, that it wasn't strong.
Yeah.
So, and also I guess being a child of the 80s, my goal was to get a teaching credential and go somewhere with a credential that other people couldn't go and reach people with the gospel. So I went to Masters with that in mind, started hearing expository preaching, and was like, oh, this makes so much more sense than these few verses out of context that I'd been getting. Got so excited. I remember my freshman year being totally overwhelmed by how can I take all this in and apply it all and do it all. And then being humbled with, I can't do it all. That's what Christ has done, and now I get to learn and just rejoice in all these Bible classes and chapels and So that was a good growing time. And our sophomore year, we went to Israel. This is where our story...
So this is where it all comes together. So I went on this mission trip to Italy after my freshman year. And so then the next year of university, we're in Israel. So Masters has his campus in Israel. You can go study for a semester over there. There's like 40 students at a time that would go and spend 5 months in Israel studying Israel and the Bible and all these things. So sophomore year, I go over there. And so at this time in my mind, I'm starting to think, okay, like, what if I do missions? What would that look like? Da, 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 da. And then I meet this girl. And she's there in Israel, and she's intelligent, and she's beautiful, and she wants to be a missionary. And I think, there's something here. There's something to this. So.
And I'm thinking, I'm getting my credential, and I'm going somewhere where no one can go.
So I say, would you like to go for a walk around Jerusalem with me? And
that's a wonderful.
So we had our first
date.
date in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And the rest is history. That's the whole story. Yeah.
That easy. One walk around Jerusalem and boom.
Yeah.
Done.
Right now. Okay, that's great.
It was done in his mind. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's where it is.
He even went back and made a video of our walk, and a year later, he stole my laptop, and I couldn't find my laptop anywhere.
So we got stealing laptop. We got forging signatures.
Yeah. And he put this video of our first date. He was good.
The maturity has happened.
There you go.
But who thinks of videoing the first date for a year later?
So I'm just curious on this Jerusalem walk. That's pretty cool. At that time, did you think that, wow, this is husband material? This could be. You did. So there was a thought there. Okay. All right, so it wasn't just Aaron. All right. It was mutual. All right.
Yeah. The Israel relationships were known for,
Do you want to describe my appearance at that time?
Please.
Well, he went to Israel with a totally baked head, no hair.
I was experimenting with.
That's a good thing, I think.
No hair.
I like it.
And camo.
Yeah, that's not bad.
He wore his Desert Shield camo pants.
I don't do that, though. I can't
everywhere.
agree.
And then all the guys went with that blonde. They all bleached it at some point, but
so I had like a semi-bleached hair, kind of like white on top and sort of.
Okay.
Well, it was supposed to be white, but they didn't have enough stuff, so it ended up kind of orange, So it was a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if my daughter went out with somebody that looked like that, I would have questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But God made it work out,
fun.
right?
We had lots of good conversations and all centered on the gospel and missions and.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So you started dating, and then how soon after that did you guys get married?
A couple years later, so we got married right after we finished college, and so by that time, we were, so we said, okay, we're gonna get married, we're gonna go do missions, and there was, I think by that time we thought, okay, well, what kind of missions do we want to do? There's all kinds of different things. We could, do medicine, we could, do church planting, we could. A lot of different things out there. And so what we'd focused on was theological education specifically, just because of the strategic nature of it. We thought if we can go somewhere and, not just personally evangelize several people, but we can invest in people who are going to go start churches and, train others to make disciples and to lead. That's a way of multiplying ourselves and our impact in a way that we can't achieve just by ourselves going and meeting a bunch of people. And so that was on our minds, and we thought, okay, where in the world can we do that? And so, we're wrestling with that, but thought, okay, well, for sure, if we're going to go and train pastors, we need to be trained ourselves. So that led us to seminary. So we got married after college, went to seminary at the Master's Seminary, did that for 3 years, and then thought, okay, we probably still need, if we're going to be teaching at a seminary level, we need a little more seasoning. And
at that point, we were 23.
23, we thought, okay, we could go overseas.
How are we going to train people?
But I'm 23, I've never been a pastor. Should I go say, now I'm going to teach you how to be a pastor?
Right.
That seems a little weird, right? So
a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So moved to Dallas. So we've been in California, moved back to Dallas, which is home. Started at Dallas Seminary in a PhD program there. And
thought we'd go really fast because he did first seminary in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah,
we can get a PhD.
And we've skipped over the part where we knew Pastor PJ in college in his younger years, but we'll just let that be to the side for now. And
bring him back in
we'll tell you those stories later. Yeah. But then, so got to Dallas, and we got in, so starting into a PhD program, we got involved in this little church plant in Dallas. And so we're just helping out. The pastor was a guy that I'd gone to seminary with, and so just a small church, small body of believers. And so we're just trying to help out wherever we can. We're volunteering in the youth ministry at that time, and I was like the world's worst youth pastor because I'm kind of no fun.
You weren't very
fun. So that was a challenge for youth ministry, and so.
And it was all girls.
Yeah, but so then, like what happened is what sometimes happens in churches. We kind of didn't do well at that ministry, so they put us in other ministries, and so got to serve as an associate pastor in that church for a number of years, and the Lord really used that to help us understand what ministry is like and how to shepherd people and how to disciple people and how to lead ministries and how to work with other elders. And so that was a season where we were studying and getting prepared to go overseas, but also just learning and growing and living life in the context of the local church. And so several of our kids were born during that time. And so that was about a 9-year period before then finally in 2013, our church sent us out to go overseas.
Gotcha. And then where within that did you have the connection with Compass? When did that pop up?
So it was like this. So we were, during that period, our church knew from the very beginning of the time that we were there that we were going to be going overseas. And so that was just talked about a lot at the church. And we were we knew we wanted to go and wanted to be involved in theological education, but we didn't know where. And so we were, investigating ministries in different areas and checking out different parts of the world. And at one point, we had some connections in India. And so we went on a trip to India and visited these ministries over there. And we're thinking through, there's a huge need in this country. It's the most unreached country in the world. We had a ministry partner that was planting a church there in New Delhi, and they invited us to come over and do theological training there, and it seemed like kind of the ideal fit. And so we'd been on this trip. We'd been through this whole process. And so there came a day where we were making this big presentation to the church, to our church, that, okay, here's the plan. We're going to send the Zellers out to go to India. And so I think I preached, and the other elders were talking about India. And so that was all going on. And I should say before that, I think I first became aware of Pastor Mike when I was in seminary, that, we used his book in the preaching class. I think he came and spoke in the chapel at the seminary. So I knew a little bit about him, had really benefited from that book, had, really shaped a lot of my preaching around what I learned from Pastor Mike, but I didn't know him at that time. So anyway, so then we have this day at our church where we're doing the presentation. Okay, we're sending the Zellers out to India. And so it so happens that day that guess who's at church? Pastor Mike is there. And so
I remember him saying, "Oh no, the guy who wrote the book is here and I'm preaching."
So
while you were preaching.
Yeah, so
that's nerve-wracking.
He had had there's I think something to do with Focal Point. They were doing something in Dallas, and so he was in town that day, and so he just randomly, I'm going to visit some random church, and so he just shows up at our church, and so he happens to be there and sit through the India presentation.
Well, did you know it before your presentation started, or you found out afterwards?
No, I think I met him after. And so
so you didn't know he was there.
Came up afterwards.
Oh, okay. Praise God for that.
I know who you are. So, so again, God's providence and sort of making that connection, and
awesome.
So we talked a little bit. He said, kind of stay in touch, and then, but that was a while. That was like a couple of years before we went overseas, and then I think he put me in touch with Pastor Lucas, who at that time was, I think, the junior high pastor, but he was, overseeing missions as well. And so I got in touch with Pastor Lucas, and so we just started talking, and so there was just a series of conversations that led to us being, mission partners with Compass. So
that's awesome. And so where was the first place? Was it India that you...
Yeah, so in 2013 we moved to India, and our plan then was to stay in India long term. We as I was saying, we saw the need there. We had a ministry partner there. We thought that was kind of the ideal situation to be, and so as it ended up, we were there for 1 year, and then we had to leave, which was a huge surprise. And some of y'all were following that and were with us and getting those updates during that time, and so there was basically several different things came together. My brother was there working with us. He had some very serious health issues, and we had a new baby, and then we lost our visa. And so essentially we got kicked out of the country, and with this visa situation, not able to return anytime soon. And so we're just in that place of trying to figure out, what do we do now? We thought this was all about God had been directing us down this path for the last 10 years, and we thought, okay, here's the moment where it's all going to happen, and then it all kind of falls apart after a year. And so it was a time of trying to figure out, okay, like, God, what are you doing here? And then as it turns out, what he was doing was bringing us to a place now in Dubai where, with hindsight, we can see now, okay, like, all the things that all the desires God had put on our heart to be involved in training leaders who are going to be shaping the church among the least reached, the even better opportunity to do that is in the UAE, because there we have Indian people, yes, but not only Indian people, people from all over the world, from every tribe and tongue and nation, literally, are there in Dubai. They're speaking English. They're there temporarily. They're going back. And so we saw, okay, here's this place where we can do what we were hoping to do, but even more than that is available there. And there's churches there that are like-minded, that are preaching the gospel. And so it just was it wasn't our brilliant plan, but just really the Lord directing us there through, a series of events.
Yeah. So a couple questions just about, I want you to really paint an image for us of what it's like to be overseas, what it's like to be a missionary overseas. But I guess, what was the biggest challenge that, for either one of you, what was the biggest challenge that you faced once you got over? Let's just talk about Dubai. Once you got there, what was the biggest challenge that you remember?
I think early on the biggest challenge was just adjusting to Dubai. We'd spent these 10 plus years planning on India, to the point our kids thought we'd never get to India, that we just talked about it. Because we kept doing church ministry and adding more kids and continuing to work on the PhD, and it just, God's timing was that long. So getting to India was, this is our place. Like, we're finally here. And it was a hard year, because India's a hard place to live. But we were thriving and we were enjoying it. Then we came back thinking we'd only be back here for 12 weeks, dealing with Moses' feet that all of you prayed for. And so we just shut the door on the apartment, told our friends, we'll see you in 12 weeks. And we didn't.
You grab tissue over.
Yeah,
Anyways, sorry about that. It's funny thinking back.
Sorry, right at the table, right behind.
So getting to India was hard, or getting to Dubai was hard for us. That even my kids were like, it's boring. But now we can, when we look and I talk to my friends and they say, you understand Indians. Like, you understand us and you've seen our home and you've lived there. You can see that God had a plan. But those first few months were rough. What are we doing here in this hot place? We said we'd never live in the Middle East. That was our one qualification.
God has a sense of humor with things when we're stubborn about it.
We would led a missions trip our junior year at Masters to Jordan. It was a great trip, and we loved what we did, but we said never the Middle East. So, but those first few months were rough, and he was designing a seminary program that didn't exist. The church didn't really know who we were, or what we were doing. But it was a good time of just trusting the Lord that this was his plan, that we'd been faithful to take the steps, but he was directing our path. Yeah. And now, 6 years in, it's definitely where we love to be.
That's great. And see the love that you have for just the people that you get to interact with. Tell us one of the most memorable moments you've had just being overseas, that just, when you hear that, it comes right to mind of this is an impact of God's faithfulness and just his work through you guys.
Yeah, I think a really memorable moment that happened recently was just back in May of this year. A few months ago, we had our first graduating class from the seminary. And so we were, now 5 years into the ministry, and we were supposed to do it last year, but then some things got canceled because of COVID, and so it sort of got pushed back. And all of our students are part-timers because they're also working, and so they have jobs, and they can only take classes nights and weekends, so it goes a little more slowly. And so after 5 years, we had our first group, our first graduates getting to finish. And so I think just that day, being able to to see them all kind of lined up with their caps and their gowns on, and just having walked with them through that journey, through the 5 years, and seeing just that development in their lives and reflecting on the plans they had going forward for ministry, and then just thinking of where God had brought us, and that week, a few days before the graduation, my brother's in Dubai now. He's one of the pastors at our church, and so he forwarded me an email, and the email was one that I'd sent him 16 years before. And it was when we first started talking about, he was, I think, in college at that time, and we're both talking about missions, and we're talking about, okay, what if we what if we went overseas together? And what if we were serving together in the same place? And, we can be involved in starting a seminary. And so we kind of were talking about these things in this email exchange from 16 years ago. And so he passed it on and said, okay, like basically, now it's happening. The Lord is doing this thing that we talked about so long ago. And so just that feeling like now we've moved from having been so long in a stage of preparing and getting ready and going and trying to get started and trying to get set up, and just kind of that being a milestone, saying, okay, like now, like it's happening. Now there's results coming out of that. There's fruit that's coming from the ministry, and Lord willing, the first of many that will be, coming in many years to come.
Wow, that's awesome. And what's interesting about that, and we talked about it, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when I did the message on prayer, is like even just that importance of writing things down of how God has answered prayers and being able to go back to that. You have it via email 16 years later, but you just see God's faithfulness in our life. And that encourages us to keep pressing on when it gets tough, right? Because life is not going to get easier for us, but being able, I'm sure, to look back on that and see, hey, here was a plan, and we were praying about it and working towards it, and God's blessed that plan. That's awesome to hear. Talk about your family a little bit. Obviously, raising kids in America, there's pros and cons to that. But just being overseas, what's some of the big differences of raising a family over there as opposed to what you know of here in the States?
We have lots of adventures. It's funny listening to the kids over there chat. They'll all talk about, hey, have you been to Thailand? And remember the tigers you can hold? And like, it's just, Eric texted me one day, like, there's weird kids in the car, like comparing their trip notes to like weird places. But that's just life, like living in a multicultural big city where people are from all over the place. It's a huge blessing that they've been able to see the world. When we come back here, they're like, where's the world? We miss all these cultures and accents, and so we love that part of just interacting with so many different people. They get to see how different people live and think, and so we homeschool, and we have adventures. Our home is open all the time to people, and so that I think has been really good for the kids. They're great at serving and helping, and that was the worst part of COVID, was our house was shut.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, talk about that a little bit since you touched on it. But when you say your home is open, what does that look like? Families, how does that work out for you guys?
Depends on the week, and the day, the hour.
Well, one of the things in Dubai is that it's a strange legal situation where the church is legally allowed to exist, and so we're in the open. We have a church website. We have visas to be pastors at the church, so there's nothing hidden about what we do. But we also don't have full legal rights, and one of the issues there is real estate. We can't just go buy a building or rent a building, or we're not able to get property like that. And so we have church services normally have been in a hotel. We get the ballroom in the hotel, have a service there. And so we're pretty restricted on access to facilities. And so one of the things that means is that our home kind of functions as an all-purpose space. And so we essentially run the seminary out of our house. We kind of have a big house, and most of our family stuff is on the top floor, and the ground floor is really kind of the seminary hub. And so I have my office down there, and my staff comes in and out of there, and we're having meetings in and out of there all week, and we'll do classes down there. And so we just got, on any given day, we've got 10, 20, 30 people through the house, doing one thing or another. And so that's definitely been different in the last year.
Yeah, Moses should have graduated with your graduating class.
Yeah, well, we had, at one time,
mascot.
We had, the Moses was in kindergarten. We had kids taking college classes online. We had the seminary students there. So we had like K through graduate school all under the same roof,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What are some of the biggest challenges, I guess, that the church faces over there in Dubai? Like any type of specific, when you think about persecution of the church or things that you guys are daily battling with, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest everyday one is what I just said, is facilities. And so, and especially in the last year, the government hasn't allowed us to meet in hotels. And so we have not been able to meet in Dubai since March of 2020. And so we were doing online video only for a while. Then more recently, we've been a different emirate, so kind of the next state over had different rules, and so we were able to meet up there. So we're driving an hour and a half to this other emirate to have church services once a week, and so we've been doing that and then live streaming it for the people who can't attend. That's kind of been the last 6 months. But just in the last week, we got the news that they're allowing churches to meet in Dubai again. So as of this Friday, we'll be back in Dubai for the first time, and so that's great. That's good news. And so I guess the challenge then is just being able to. It's always kind of a weekly thing. We were meeting in this hotel, but then this hotel, oh, we're doing a wedding, like you got to go. So then we got to change to a different place, and so just finding an available venue. And so I think just we long for consistency in that, and then just this kind of post-COVID time, we just want to see the church come back, and so we kind of have to rebuild. And so the challenge is really just getting everybody back together and kind of restarting some of the ministries. Heather was just saying that one of the ladies that coordinates the kids ministry is texting everybody that's been involved in the past, saying, okay, who wants to still do kids ministry? So it's kind of got to restart in a lot of ways. And so that'll be kind of the challenge for the next period of time.
Good. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, I do want to ask a couple rapid fire questions, just to get your thoughts on it. But as far as family, like what's the fun thing to do over in Dubai? What's a go-to thing to do for you and the family if you got some time with whatever time you have running a school in your house?
Well, we were inside a lot because it's like 150 degrees out there.
Okay.
So there's pretty limited in what you can do
fun.
outside.
Right.
In the winter,
November.
which is a nice time of year, we'll do outside stuff. We'll go bike riding, go to the beach, etc. In the hot time of year, we're inside, so we're cooking. We got Randall back there. He's become an expert in cheesecake making.
Wow.
Emmett makes pies, so you can talk to them if you have any orders you want to put in.
Caroline's chocolate cake.
Caroline makes amazing chocolate. So we have some advanced cooking happens. Play a lot of board games together. Moses loves baseball, so we got the MLB app, and so
where did he get that from?
He loves the Dodgers, so he always wants to watch the Dodgers. So
you let that happen in the house?
Yeah,
we grew up on the Dodgers.
I'm more of a Ranger fan myself, but Moses likes the Dodgers.
That's fair.
So we have that conflict.
That's good.
Yeah.
So if you have a date night, what do you guys do on a date night? Just the two of you?
We usually find an interesting restaurant we haven't tried out. It's not a chain. Dubai has all the chains you could want from any country. But we try and find something strange and
You don't normally go to Chili's. No, you can go to Chili's.
You can. Yeah. Cheesecake Factory. But we usually try and find like a Yemeni restaurant or something strange and have some.
Yeah, a lot of good Indian food, Pakistani food, Lebanese
have an
food,
adventure.
Persian food. So we'll go find something weird and enjoy.
Sometimes go watch the Dubai Fountain Show, which is pretty cool.
Oh, okay. What's the favorite food if you had to pick one?
Indian food.
Indian.
Yeah.
Dubai's got my Indian friends say Dubai has better Indian food than India does.
Wow.
So it's really good.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Oh, okay. Here we go.
Persian.
We got Asha here.
Dissenting view. Okay, we'll talk.
The
Yeah,
Persian
we
food
can
is
talk
good.
I disagree with several of your comments.
Okay.
Better give her some questions.
Yeah.
Have some questions.
And so I actually got this from Pastor PJ, and we got a slide for it. But he was telling me about this place, and you might, Eric, he said it'll ring a bell as soon as you see it.
Weinberger's
Weinberger's in Grapevine, Texas.
Oh yeah, Weinberger's.
He said this was your spot, and you had this desire to try everything on the menu. Is this?
Yeah, so it's a deli.
He did.
Okay.
So it was just up the street from our office, really just kind of across the street, and so really good sandwiches. And so they had I think the menu had 60 or 70 sandwiches on there. So at one point I said, I'm going to try every one of them. And so just over. I didn't go every day, but a couple times a week. So over a few years, I ate every sandwich on the menu.
Even the liverwurst.
Liverwurst.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Okay. Okay.
There were a couple that were not my favorite, but many of them were very good.
Good. Yeah, he was like, this was Eric's place. Like, he had to go there, and he wanted to try everything. And so, yeah, that looks good. Looks good.
It's a good place.
Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about, and then we'll get into the prayers, because I know we always like to just hear what kind of things can we be praying for you, for your family, for what you have ahead. But just sort of to segue us into that, what's next when you look at, Lord willing, the next 6 months or year? What is on the plans for that? What are you guys looking to do in that time?
Yeah, so one thing is church, and so I just talked about that as far as getting church back in Dubai, getting things back and going with that. We're starting our new semester for the seminary just in a couple of weeks, and so got a lot going on trying to get that together and get the new classes started and get all the students oriented. So that's happening. A little further down the line, one of the kind of the big new developments for the seminary is we're trying to start a new campus in Abu Dhabi. So Abu Dhabi is the capital of the UAE. It's about an hour and a half drive from where we are. And so there's a partner church down there, good church, really faithful lead pastor down there, very like-minded. And so they want to do kind of what we're doing up in Dubai. They want to do that in Abu Dhabi. And so we're trying to make an extension of what we're doing down there. And so there's a lot of new students that'll come in through that. And so great opportunities to partner with a like-minded church to train even more people. But there's just a lot of logistics we've got to figure out, and we're trying to bring a guy on our staff to be kind of down there and our point man for that campus. And so that kind of expansion will be a big focus of the next few months. And then we have new team members. So we have 2 new faculty that have come to Dubai within the last 6 months. So kind of the next semester is also going to be a period of getting them acclimated, helping them get settled and figure out what they're doing, and kind of building the cohesiveness of the team as we're all kind of working together, for the first time in some ways.
Okay, good, excellent. Well, as we think about prayers, and some of this might overlap, but ask you just to put a few prayers together that we can actually start praying for now, and then even as we move forward. But just talk to us about that before we turn over to a time of prayer. How can we be praying for you specifically, Eric, and then also you, Heather, and then combine the both of you?
Yeah, you want to go?
Okay. I think the biggest kind of thing on my mind right now, is I've been here in the States with a little time to think, is just there's a lot of opportunities as September comes, and hopefully things are opening up a bit. Lots of counseling opportunities, Bible study opportunities, helping other moms, younger moms who are homeschooling opportunities. So just wisdom and discernment in how to spend my time. That there's the home to run, and husband to love, and kids to love and train. And I had a great ladies' Bible study going before COVID, and it persevered through Zoom for a little while and then died. So hoping to pick that back up, just see what God has.
Amen. Good. Eric.
Yeah, I think for our family, one big thing would be this transition. So Caroline's about to start at Masters University, and so kind of following in our footsteps in that way. And so we're going to drop her off in a few days up there. And so it'll be our first time going back without the whole family. So just pray for her as she gets started. Pray for the rest of us with that transition. And then other prayers would be for the church as we get back and settled, for the ministry to expand and go forward. You could pray for the seminary to be faithful in our teaching and in our mentoring of our students, and ultimately just pray for fruit to come from the ministry. Pray that the Lord is raising up people from the seminary that are going to go and preach the gospel in a way that people hear and believe that don't know Christ now. So just keep praying for fruit to come out of the ministry.
Awesome. Well, let's give the Zellers a hand for...
We're really thankful for all of you. We're thankful for Compass, thankful for the partnership that we have. And so just really encouraged to be here. And already so many of you have come and said, hey, I'm praying for you every day, every week. And just we need that. We're thankful for that. And so we're going to leave today encouraged by all of you.
Excellent. Well, the Zellers will be around just a little bit afterwards, but as we always do, we got some prayer requests from them that they've given to us that I'd love to really turn it to the tables and have all of you start praying for them right now, and then again take pictures of these and remember them and continue to pray for them. And we are so appreciative of the work that your entire family is doing. Every time we get updates, I know it's encouraging for us to go out, and we all have one mission. You all are doing doing it overseas in Dubai, and we have a mission here in Orange County, as all Christians do wherever they are placed on this earth. And it's just great to see how focused you all are on the mission, where there's so many distractions that are around, but you continue to keep the advancement of the gospel front and center in your life. So thank you for doing that. And I want to pray right now to conclude our time here, but then right after that, like I said, we'll pray at your tables, and then they'll be in the back, and looks like we have cake over there for breakfast. Sure? Okay. Anyway, let's pray. God, we are so thankful for the Zeller family and how you have blessed them and gifted them and given them this heart and desire to seek and save the lost, Lord, and proclaim the gospel, the truth in a world that needs to hear it. Lord, there's so much that's going on in our world, whether we're here in Orange County, whether it's in Dubai, India. Lord, we know that Satan and the enemy is working. And even as Pastor PJ is talking about in Ephesians 6, there's just the armor of God that we need to armor ourselves up with every single day, Lord, and go out and have that mission and focus to share the gospel and to allow people to know that Jesus Christ died on the cross for their sins. Lord, that is the hope that we can have in you, that you've allowed us to see, Lord. And as believers sitting here this morning, we're grateful for that. And Lord, I just pray that you would continue to bless this family. Bless them as they do mighty work for you with the seminary that they have going on, the church that they have, just the people that they get to interact with. And just even hearing Heather's emotion and love for the people that she's connecting with and the impact that they're making overseas is just such encouraging to hear. And Lord, I pray that that encourages all of us to continue to see the people that God has placed in, that you have placed in our life, our neighbors, our co-workers, the people that we rub shoulders with every day. See them as souls that in 100 years, they'll be in one or two places. And you have given us this gospel truth and allowed us to see it for what it is, Lord, and help us be bold and zealous and just be very encouraged to go out and share that truth that everyone needs to hear, every person that's walking the face of this earth. So we thank you for the Zellers and their ministry, and we're so grateful that we get to pray for them and continue to see the great work that they're doing over in Dubai. Lord, and I pray that you would just allow their family to grow, and even Caroline, as she goes to school, I pray that you would bless her time there, that she would learn more about you, so that she can not only just have it as head knowledge, but go out and share it amongst this world that is in great need of it. So we thank you for this time that we got to spend with them, and we thank you that we were able to be encouraged by the great work that you are doing through them overseas, and we just pray for their mission, their ministry to continue to be fruitful. In Jesus' name, amen.